Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I am joined today by the lovely LL Stevens. You also go by Linda, right?
Yes, that's my name.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me today, Linda.
And thank you for having me here. I'm so excited.
I am too. We were talking in the back, uh, the back room there, but I have so many questions. I have an agenda, and I have a feeling we're going to go way off topic from what what I wrote.
Lucky.
In all good things. So, to introduce yourself and your books, can you give us a little intro?
I am LL Stevens. Linda is my name, so LL. You got the name there. And I write epic fantasy. Right now, the series I'm publishing is a 6-book series. It's all written. I am putting out the books each year. And but I love epic fantasy. I love the heroism and the nobility and the darkness. And so that is what I write. And the series is out. 4 books are published. And the 5th book is coming out in 2025, early 2025. And the 6th book will be out in 2026. It's
Okay.
written, I'm just revising and doing the editing.
So you've had all the books written in the background, and little by
Yeah.
little, you're working on the final stages of them and releasing.
Yes, I've been writing these books for decades.
Oh,
And that's
wow.
one reason they're very, they hold together well, I think.
Yeah.
That's because they were written as a full series, edited over time, and uh, and I just decided one day that, well, I was approached by a publisher, a small indie publisher,
Yeah.
who said, "I want to publish those," and I said, "Yes, let's do it." Yeah,
Fantastic.
because I'm not going to self-publish anything.
Right.
I'm just not going to, but she wanted to. So okay, so here we are, and the books are being published, and they're being well accepted. So I'm so happy with that. Really.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled about it too because I love Sordania. You twisted my emotions in every way possible with that one. So I'm glad to see more readers picking it up.
Yeah.
With that being the case, why don't we jump into that topic there of when did the idea for this series first pop up? You said you've been working on it for decades. That's a long time.
Decades. Yes, it is a long time. I started writing it when I was 13 years old, and as you can see, I'm no longer 13. That was a long, long time ago. It
Yeah.
first started as a series of stories I told to my sister in bed at night. We had a bedroom with 2 twin beds, and I would tell it to her on the way to school and on the way home from school. So it just gradually kept going. It started out as a series that did not start with Sordanian. It started with what is now the, um, the third book.
Oh, the third
Oh,
one.
the third book. So if you want to start where they originally started, you can start with the third book. However, uh, I, it was my love. It was the series I was writing, the one that was, but it was complex. It was deep. It
Mm.
started out, believe it or not, with a TV show that I was 13. I fell in love with one of the characters, and he was handsome. I thought he deserved a better story, so I gave him one. But it went back and forth. But as it grew, that was not the first novel I published. The first
Yes.
novel I published was this one
Ibis.
by Linda Steele. That
Okay.
was at the time, I was in my 20s. I published that book with Daw, which is a trad publisher, traditional publisher.
Yeah.
And it did quite well, but things happened. My marriage fell apart. Anyway, I told my editor there, Peter Stamfel, about the series, and I sent him the first couple books. And he said it was really good, but it was ambitious.
Mm.
And he's right. It was ambitious.
Yeah.
And he said to me, "Tell you what, I really want to see what's going on with that Derillian guy and Mark Frederick, because it was all in there that Derillian was this complex obstacle to the whole series. But there's this thing with Mark Frederick that made it so he could be turned and made useful. So it's like, okay, he wants that story? I can't. What am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah.
Well, life. And there were reasons why things fell apart, and I didn't publish anymore for a while.
Okay.
But the time came when it was like I couldn't work with that series because it had been written during the marriage. And anything I had written during the marriage, my ex-husband said he was going to sue me about and get money from it. And he even threatened
Right.
my publisher. It was a very nasty, horrible divorce with a
Yeah.
trial. And he kept threatening me with lawsuits if I published any of the stuff written during the marriage. But you know what I hadn't written during the marriage? I hadn't written that.
Right.
And I said, well, maybe I should find out what's going on with that Trillium guy. So I
Yeah.
started writing Sir Daniel, and I did, and I workshopped it. I did it very professionally, but I couldn't go back to my publisher with it. And well, I
Okay.
mean, they'd been threatened; they were not too happy.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, that's how that book got written. And it's really interesting when you have relationships that fall apart in your life. Sometimes you want to create relationships that work. And
Mm.
at that point, I really wanted that relationship with Dorelli and Mark Frederick to work.
Right.
I wanted that to do magical things.
Mm.
Magical meaning in a relationship term, in human terms, in helping an angry, very angry young man
Yeah.
find out how not to be destructive. That maybe there was something else he could be.
Yeah. I think you did a beautiful job with it. And I'm sorry that that part of your life was such a I can't imagine how stressful
It
that
was
must
very
have been.
stressful.
Yeah.
But as a writer, you never stop writing, you see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had your story here and up here.
Yes.
So it was all there. You were working on it, I'm sure, in your brain and
Mhm.
keeping it close to your heart until you could get everything down and
And even then, I mean, my divorce was way back in the 90s. So it was in the early 2000s that I wrote Sir Daniel
okay, wow.
when it was written. And I have the disc to prove it.
Oh my Oh my gosh, I haven't seen one of those in so long.
I know. I know. So old.
It's it's important for more than one reason.
Oracle.
Yes.
Lucky. Yes.
That's amazing, though. That's quite the journey. So you what when did you first publish Ibis then?
In 1985. I
Wow.
was young. I was very young.
Yeah.
My sister dared me because I had been telling her stories and writing stories, and she read the manuscript of Ivy. She said, "This is as good as anything else out there. Send it in." So I looked up who my favorite authors were published by, and it turned
Mm,
out to be Daw, Donald Wollheim books,
yeah.
and so I sent it to them because they published Tanith Lee and Marion Zimmer Bradley and C.J. Cherry, all of whom I loved,
Yeah.
and so they accepted the book. Much to my shock and surprise, they wanted it, they bought it, and I was published.
Good on your sister for giving you
Yeah,
that little push
yeah,
too.
she did. She did that to me, for me. I'm not sure which. Mhm.
All with good results.
All with good results. And I dedicated this book to her because that's where the story started. So,
Yeah, I was gonna wonder I was wondering about that. I'm like, if your
yeah,
sister had such an impact and the story was so important between you, I was like, there's gotta be a dedication in there somewhere to her.
there is, definitely.
Oh, that's wonderful. We have a few folks here with us as well. Timothy, another self-published author. Hello.
Hello.
And, EL, another author. Always great to see you guys. Thank you for stopping in. We've got, Joao. I wanna say hello to one of my favorite writers. It's already Monday here in
I
Portugal.
know.
Wow. Thanks for joining us. And yes, EL, we all need people that support us and give us that little push to do things that we might not otherwise.
Mhm.
So looking at where the story started,
Yeah,
your passion for storytelling, where did that start?
with
What sparked that passion for stories for you?
horses.
Really?
Well, I was a girl, still am. Uh, and what girl doesn't love horses? I don't know. All of us do.
I'm terrified of horses.
I'm terrified.
Oh, I'm no.
I wanted a pony. But anyway, I started reading animal books a lot. I like
Mm,
animals. And a librarian pointed me to Misty of Chicote and King of the Wind. King of the
Okay.
Wind captured my imagination. It was exotic. It was set in another country, land. It was the past. It had the past, and it had horses. So I went from there into the Black Stallion books. The Black Stallion Returns, Son of the Black Stallion,
Yes, I've seen those.
all of those.
Yeah.
And I kept reading those. And so I read a lot of books about horses, and that really inspired me to just love books. And I
Mhm.
branched out a bit. My grandparents kept sending me the Bobbsey twins, but they were good. And Nancy
Yeah.
Drew was good, but I really liked stories that were a little more exotic.
Mm.
And then there was a teacher in El Paso, which is where I lived at the time because my father moved around. I never lived more than 2 years in the same place.
Wow.
And so anyway, she recommended The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.
Mm.
Tolkien, Lord of
Yes.
the Rings. And I pick it up and I'm like, took me a couple of times to get into it. It was a big book, a dense book, but I fell in love with that. And that
Mm.
taught me that you could have another world entirely. It didn't
Mm.
have to be set in this world. You could literally have books in other worlds. That just fired my imagination. So I combined that with the guy I loved in a TV show who deserved a better story.
Yeah.
And I gave him a story where he was quite different than he was in the show, although still just noble and handsome as ever.
Okay. Gotta keep those traits.
Got to keep those.
Yeah.
He eventually turned into Derillian, but he was
Yeah.
originally supposed to be a different character. Anyway, and started telling the stories to my sister at night in bed. We'd tell him this story when I would walk her to school. She was my younger sister, and when we walked home. So I just kept telling the stories. But the passion for books came from horses, and then
Mm.
just finding new books to read. And I fell in love with fantasy. And once
Yeah.
I fell in love with fantasy, it was science fiction after that.
Right.
And I love literary fiction too now. I got my degree in English. I've read a lot of books, but it started with fantasy.
So if we go back and we look at now,
Hmm.
looking back, if you could give us 3 of your most memorable fantasy or sci-fi reads, any kind of
Yeah.
genre really, that you loved back then,
Yeah.
and then maybe give us a couple from today, from present day that you're loving.
Okay. I absolutely loved books like The Lord of the Rings and Dune.
Mhm.
And I loved the work, and still do, of Thomas Burnett Swan, who's gone, and this was back in the 70s.
Yeah.
He wrote books like Moon Dust and How Are the Mighty Fallen, which are brilliant, and also LGBTQ, very friendly at that era. And one of the reasons I went with this, um,
Right.
because I loved his work. So, and Tanith Lee, please
Right.
read her Flat Earth series. It's brilliant and beautiful and poetic, and it's like jewels strung across the page.
Mm.
So that would be the past stuff. I did eventually read, of course, Song of Ice and Fire, and The Wheel
Right.
of Time, and all of the classics. I was active in the convention scene, so I met these authors and I read their books. But and more recently, though, I've really loved indie books the most of all.
Yeah.
I mean, I read Legend a lot before it was ever picked up by trad.
Yes.
I bought that one right away. But I mean, I also have loved A.J. Calvin's books. I
Okay.
really, I really enjoy her Kane Legacy series. I'm reading that. When I'm writing, I read slowly.
Yeah.
I tend not to dive into other people's worlds when I'm deep in my own. But I do love that series very, very much. And I just started a book by, I think it's Thomas Kaplan, but it's um,
Okay.
the, it's over there. I can't look at the Fall Is All There Is, or something like that.
Oh, okay, okay.
Really good, but I haven't really gotten deeply into it yet. But I do highly recommend
Right.
it also. And I like the series by Stewart, his Drowned Empire series.
OPL.
P.L. Stewart, very good.
Yes, yes.
That I
Yeah.
read a little while ago, but I've liked it. I haven't read the most recent book yet, but
Oh,
I will.
is he at book 4 or 5?
I think it's 4, 5,
4?
4. I think it's
Somewhere around there.
something like that. I have enough trouble keeping track of my own, but yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes yeah,
Oh, that's what yes, and yeah, PL is just amazing.
yeah.
All the videos he does, all the support he shows, he writes and I don't know how he reads as much while he's writing,
I
'cause
don't
that's
know how he does it either, I cannot do that.
yeah, plus
I
the content creation.
I'm in awe, you know, and he does that too, I know.
Yeah. Okay, so Timothy's got all the info for us. Thank you, Timothy. 4
Okay,
out of
thanks.
5
Now
and
I know
5
something.
ghosts of the
Put it
spring.
on my list. Yeah, Christmas. Yep.
That's fantastic. Yeah, there's so many books in the indie community, self-published community that are coming out, and it's amazing. You get all of these different kinds of genres, different takes on themes, and all the
Mhm.
different worlds. It's to me, it's refreshing because there's a lot that sometimes feels repetitive when you're reading so much in one genre, and authors are just amazing with how much creativity they have in making it all so unique.
I'm glad that you hear you say that because I often wonder how do I mean, there's so many books out now. When I
Yeah,
first got into publishing, there weren't that many books out each year compared
that's
to now.
it.
It's a ton, and I wondered how it felt to a reviewer. Mhm.
It's definitely changed over the years. I remember back when I was in high school when Malice by John Gwynne
Yes.
came out,
Mhm.
and for context of everyone watching, I'm in Canada, and back then, to try and get a book by a UK author was very risky. It was far more expensive, and that was the first book in the series. There
Mhm.
was no guarantee that you would get the other books in Canada because you couldn't just order online.
Wow.
That wasn't a thing. You couldn't do that. There was no, like, way of ordering it from the UK. You had to rely on your local store to continue supplying it, and it was such a risk back then. And I remember thinking, like, "I can read this, I can buy it and read it, but I might never be able to finish it depending on how things work out." So, that's changed entirely too,
Mhm.
right? We have more access to, all the books
A
out there.
lot more, yeah.
Yeah.
It's harder to find them, though. I used to go to Walden Books and
Mm.
hope that one of my authors had just, put out a new book perhaps, or maybe I'd browse and I'd find one. I
Yeah.
I don't go into physical bookstores as much as I used to, and even if I
Mhm.
do, all they show are it's a much smaller section than it used to be. Am
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a smaller section than it used to be. It
Yeah.
used to be aisles and aisles of fantasy books and science fiction, and now it's not. And
Yeah.
so it's harder to find them. I really rely on my
Right.
Twitter. I know it's I will not call it that other name. Twitter. And I see books recommended there
Yeah.
by authors that I know and love, and I or reviewers that I know and love. If I see them recommend a book a few times, I may buy that one, but it's
Yeah.
harder to find them.
It can be difficult. I think difficult in different ways. Luckily, like, where we're at, we have Indigo here, and
Mhm.
they have a pretty good stock of fantasy, although I will say half the fantasy stock is fantasy, like, romantasy,
Romantasy now.
and they've put the fantasy section right next to the romance
Oh,
section as well, so they've kind of, like, merged the 2 in a way. I don't know how I feel about that, but it just, it feels like the fantasy section is a little smaller,
yeah.
but Goodreads, I also find, is pretty decent if you're looking at a book, it gives you some recommendations. Same with Amazon, if you like a particular book, it might give you some recommendations at the bottom. I'll usually check those out too.
I look at them, yeah.
Yeah, Twitter is usually the go like, and friends. I've made so many friends that
And
are like, "You need to read this book that my TBR is destroyed for the next 20 years of my life."
and confession, I like romance.
And
I
that's
mean,
great.
I go through periods.
Yeah,
I'm rather fond of Regency. I watch Bridgerton. But, yeah, I mean, so it being next door, maybe somebody will wander over and see my book.
yeah,
So,
there you go.
be hopeful.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's all steps, right?
right.
And it takes time. Nothing is instant when you click publish.
No.
So in terms of, what you hope readers get out of your
Mm.
series, what do you hope they walk away with when they finish book 1 or the entire series?
I hope they come away finding the world a place they'd like to continue visiting, because
Mm,
I created it to be a world with depth. It has a history. It has people who I think are pretty interesting. It has conflicts I think are interesting. So I'm hoping people get into it and they learn things about family, and they learn things
mm,
about the destructiveness of holding a grudge, or how
mm,
destructive things in in between people can happen inadvertently, and how it can sometimes be fixed. And also that there's this, sometimes you don't see the forest for the trees. My characters in Sordanian especially don't see necessarily what's coming down the pike. They see
mm,
some pieces of it. They have some of the history that points to these problems, but they do not see the scale it's going to take, nor do they see the exact way they'll have to resolve this and
mm,
fix this. And ultimately, the fix is human. The fix is people. It's characters, other characters. But you meet these
mm,
characters gradually. So I hope when people read the book, they find the characters interesting enough to want to follow them. And
mm.
Sordanian can be read as a standalone.
Yeah,
At the end, the major threads of that book are wrapped up.
they are. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's more to come. You know there's more to come. And if you were interested,
Mm,
you can follow it and
yes.
you'll have a damn good story. But but if you want to just stop with that one, you can. And I hope readers will feel satisfied with that book and say, you know what, I read a good book, and they're
Mm,
happy. I want them to be happy. I'm not publishing this because I'm trying to become famous or make money. Either would be nice, that would be lovely, but I'm doing it because I want readers to be happy. I want them to be happy they visited the world, and I want them to say, wow, I'm glad I gave this book a chance. This is fun. This was good. That's what I want.
that's beautiful, and all what I got out of that too was you want your readers to end up in a book hangover when all is said and done,
That would
and
be
read
nice.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. And we have EL here. We never do see the forest for the trees. I love it when characters are half blind and depending on core values to guide them.
And that is exactly what I like to show in my books. That's
I'd say
a
you do
very
an
astute observation. Yes.
I'd say you do an excellent job of it. I there's always this part where you when you're a reader and you're going through all this and you see the whole picture of kind of what's going on or at least most of the picture and then the characters don't and you're kind of screaming at the
Yeah.
characters. It's actually yes. There's a mix with
Yeah.
is it Sordanian or Sordanian?
I say Sordanian, but you know
Okay.
what? I don't care what you call it.
Okay. Well,
I think readers are going to, with books like mine and the names and stuff, they'll have their own.
yes, yeah, so I've been calling it Sordanian, but,
Yes, that's good too.
Sord Sordanian in the first one, there was a mix of it. There were points where I'm like, "Oh my god, I wanna shake you." Like, "Come on." But there were so many more moments than that, that I was like, I have no idea. I don't trust anybody. I don't know what's going who's are these people telling the truth? We don't know. Are these people gonna it's a political fantasy.
Yeah.
You don't really wanna trust anyone, but then you also wanna cheer for certain characters, and then other ones you just wanna smack upside the head. So,
And believe me, I was wanting to smack a lot of my own characters up.
there
Yeah.
that's a good sign. That's a good sign of good character work. So, in terms of our chat here, watching with us, thank you so much again for joining us. If you have questions for Linda, pop them in the chat, and we will definitely take a look at those as well. In the meantime, while we're waiting, we're going to talk more about the series and your writing because, as you probably guessed, I have a million questions.
I will answer any question. I will. I will.
So, absolutely, I appreciate it. In terms of this binder, you said you have a
I
binder for show and tell. I wanna go into that first.
stuff like that. Yeah, I've already showed off my discs of ancientness.
Yeah,
Um,
well, is that the original notes, like, world mapping on those floppy disks?
um, yeah, that's the original versions of the story, which some of it's very rough. It's
Yeah.
episodic. It's not tied together yet.
Okay.
But I have binders like this.
Oh my
This is the
god.
original version of the story that I wrote in. But if you will pardon me to stand up, I will get
No,
this.
go for it. Whatever you need to do, because I'm really curious.
I'll show you these things.
That was a honking binder, by the way. That
Oh,
was huge.
funny story about that binder is that my husband, my second husband, the one I love to death and who supported me in writing these books
Mm,
so much, I owe him a lot.
yeah.
He was on the subway. I live in Philadelphia. So he's taking the subway to work when he was still working. And he had the binder. And he missed his stop completely. And he ended up completely in the wrong part of Philadelphia on the way northwest side. He's like, how do I get back? He was reading the book and he was so invested that he missed his stop. These
Wow.
are, this is the very earliest version of Savannah.
Okay.
It's
Handwritten notes, yeah.
and it's yeah handwritten and on the back of typewritten pages. Not quite
Wow.
typewritten, but you know how ancient printers were.
Yes.
They're from a chapter that doesn't even exist anymore.
Wow.
What happened was when I first started trying to market the book, I sent to agents, and the agents said, "Well, this book is 250,000 words," which it ended up at 190. Anyway, they said you have to cut this, you have to cut too much. So I started cutting. I
Hmm.
cut entire chapters. I rearranged some stuff. I combined characters, and I got it down to 190. And they still wanted me to cut it because they said they can't sell a 190,000 word book. So I said, "Well, I'm not going to cut it anymore. The book needs to be this long," and that's why I put it on the shelf. But there you saw one of the early versions of it right there. It was when I started writing. I write in hand sometimes,
Yeah.
and I write also now. This is another thing, which where is this? Yeah, this is this is one of my genealogies.
You have it all mapped out. That is
I have
amazing.
it mapped out. I have
Oh
genealogy
my
for
gosh.
the Sardanians, and yeah, here's the Sardanian one.
Oh, wow.
There it is.
Do you have any of this on your website, or is it all locked under key?
Well, some of it's been changed, and I have yet to find an excellent program for pedigrees and genealogies that I can just plug names in.
Oh, I
And
see.
but I do have it all mapped out. And some of the names I may have changed over time. For example,
Right.
Durilian's father had a twin brother. Well, his original name was Dorian, but guess who's
Right.
Durilian? Dorian is too confusing, so I changed it to Delos. So some of the names are incorrect, but I have the whole.
Oh my god.
I have the whole Kell genealogy, the whole Statler Randolph genealogy.
Wow.
So I have a folder called genealogies.
That is incredibly organized.
I'm so old school. And then this is the Mark Frederick folder. He had his own folder.
Wow.
And this is some of the excise chapters and information on him that I will put into the book when I write.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So, have you transitioned to typing on a computer? Are you still doing this by hand? And
This computer that I am sitting in front of, I, yes, I use a Mac.
yeah.
I have always been fairly tech forward, which is how my sons all ended up computer geniuses with companies. Anyway, so you know, I had PC and then Windows 10 killed it, so I got a Mac. My kids are like,
Mm.
"Come on, mom, get a Mac." So I got a Mac, and I have been writing on it since. The Keld King was completely written on this
Wow. Okay.
because it was written between the two series. But yeah, I write on a computer. I
Do you
print on a printer. You know.
But no, by all means, I'm curious because that would be to me, I feel like that would be a different mindset you'd have to transition to in terms of your creative process.
It was different. I started out on typewriters, of course, when I
Oh,
was
wow.
13.
Yeah.
I was writing on typewriter. And then I got a TRS 80, which was cutting edge with 48K memory. And I composed this book on that. And then I
Mm.
composed the first of the triumvirate books on the TRS city also. But I would keep transferring the documents over, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, scripted. Now it's in Word Perfect. Now it's in Word. I have so many formatting things going on.
Oh,
My
I
poor
bet.
publisher, I send her a manuscript and she's like, oh my God. And it's like she has to completely reformat it because it's got all the old code in it. I don't know how to get it out of there.
Oh my god.
That's right. All I
I'm
do
sure but make a post on Twitter. I'm sure we'll find someone who can help you out there.
oh, I'm sure. In fact, I have an alpha reader who will strip out all the formatting.
Oh, brilliant.
She's
Yeah.
a lovely person, and I trust her with everything. So she'll be getting the 6th book in just next week. I'm going to send her the 6th book.
Oh, wow. Oh, so okay. Oh, okay, yeah. Everything is happening I know everything only happen you publish 1 book a year, but that's still it feels like everything happens so quickly.
It's amazing. I mean, I had the book, Sordanian was published, I think, in 2021, and now look at us. Look at
Yeah.
I'm just very happy to have the series so close to being finished.
Are you gonna do anything special to celebrate the last book being published?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm gonna be,
Brilliant.
well, here's what I'm planning.
Okay.
I will be giving away the whole series to a few people. Just saying a giveaway. Here's the whole
Yeah.
series. I'm giving it to you. But I also want to, and I can't interest a binding of binding broken. Well, that
The
one.
broken binding,
I
yeah.
can't interest them. I haven't tried really, but I bet I don't sell enough. So what I'll do is I'll just
Mm.
pay for it myself, and I'll make a special edition
Mm.
of this whole series, just a limited number of copies, and either give them away or sell them myself
Yeah.
with illustrations and stuff. Because
Well,
I love art and illustration.
let's talk about the artwork because I've got a few examples up here, but
Well,
you've got art cards done up for your books. You continue to keep putting out artwork as well.
I have
What's the
more
process?
commissions that I'm going to be debuting soon. Yeah, I'll just show a couple of
Yeah,
examples.
I've got some here too.
These are some of the more recent ones. Like,
Mhm.
he's a dog man. He shows up in the 5th book. And I have my travel posters.
The posters are such a good idea.
Aren't they so swell? I love I love Lazard. He makes such good posters.
Got
So I
the
do commission art from artists. I've often said, only half joking, that I write books for art so I can get a cover. I love the cover art. I love my cover artist. And I like commissioning art. So
Yeah,
it just makes me happy. And why not, right? And
absolutely.
then I give away. If anybody wants some, just say, oh, give me a Twitter DM or something. Say, I want some, and I'll get your address and I'll send them to you.
That's
Any of the
that's
artwork. And I have more. I mean, I have lots of
yes.
them.
I've got more too. I've got some in frames. I've got them all over my studio here.
Yeah. I love to share it because I love art. And I also like publicizing the artist. If writers have it hard, I think artists have it harder.
Yeah,
Their work is more easily stolen, and it's hard to find people who want to pay them. I want to pay them,
yeah.
and one of my sons is an artist, and not that kind because, well, he trained in illustration, but he got his job with CNN doing graphics. So uh,
Right.
you got to pay the bills, right? But he
Absolutely.
loves art, and I love art, and I love supporting artists.
That's brilliant, and that is also very generous of you too, because I know it's only, people might think, "Oh, it's just like a little envelope you send off," but the time, the money you put into printing those, the
Mhm.
commission that you've done to pay the artist to get all these done, that's very, very generous of you. So thank you for doing that and offering it as well.
My husband
And
has said, "Well, we're not making money on these books, are we?" And I said, "No, we're
yeah,
not. Fortunately, I have other ways to make money because if I were relying on these books, I'd be starving." So
truly a passion
it's
is
a
what it is.
it's a work of passion. Yeah.
Yeah. It's evident, I will say. And, we do have a question here from EL. Do you prefer the righteous prince or the decent at heart rogue? I'm a scoundrel at heart, love political intrigue, by the way.
Oh, wow, that is a trick question, is it not? I love righteous princes, but I like them to have flaws.
Mm,
So that they make mistakes. Righteous princesses who don't make mistakes are boring. decent at heart rogues are always fun. And in some ways, Durillion is a decent at heart rogue. However, he's royal and he's a prince, so you know.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he's decent at heart, I think. But he sure can be a nasty customer. So those are the
Mm.
most interesting characters, the ones who you know they're going to be problematic. Those are the most interesting characters. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, he's got a
Mhm.
lot of anger directed at very specific people, and he's a prince. He's got the power
That power too, which is a
to
dangerous combo. Yes.
yes. So it's definitely an interesting dynamic with that. And we have JCM Byrne here as well. Welcome, good to see you. So
Yay, Jason.
so in terms of let's dig into that. Those very human and gray characters because they're flawed, they're not perfect. They for that reason they feel so realistic. They jump off the
Mhm.
page. There's a lot of nuance there. So I'd love to dive into your characters a little bit in terms of let's start with your development of the characters. When you're sitting down, you say, I have this, you talked about basing it off of a TV character earlier and you wanted to change it up a little bit. How do you take it from an idea of a person and make that person jump off the page throughout the story so that readers can connect with them?
Cardinal traits. I once had a conversation, I know this is gonna sound weird, with a science fiction author at a con about cardinal traits. Every person has a few, but when you're writing fiction, it really helps to zero in on one or two cardinal traits for your
Mm,
character. I like to give them, my characters, a cardinal trait or two where they exemplify this trait a lot. Dorellian is proud. You see a
mm,
lot of instances of him being proud, even arrogant. Um, but say you want a cardinal trait that's also decent. So he likes kids.
mm,
So you see him interacting with children. This is more in later books, but you see, oh, maybe he's not such a rough guy after all. He has this other trait, which is actually kind of maybe a nice side of him. So you get to see these cardinal traits at work. Mark Frederick is very devoted to doing the right thing. He has a strong sense of duty toward his adopted country, toward his
mhm,
adopted world, because for him it is an adopted world. And a strong sense of history. He's very dutiful, but he also uh, can he's also willing to do the hard work, which is sometimes doing the difficult things other people don't want to do. And he will do those things. And sometimes it's unpleasant stuff. And so that's another cardinal trait that he's willing to do what's necessary, difficult things. You can be dutiful and not be willing to do difficult things. And he is.
mm,
Emily's all pure mother. She wants to protect her children. She'll do just about anything.
mm.
But she also has a softer side toward her brother that you see. That shows that she can sometimes be reasonable, but you also see her being very unreasonable. She's one of the most unreasonable characters in the series. But what I'm saying is, yeah, cardinal traits are one way to do that. And
Mm.
are any of us not gray?
Yeah.
I don't want to reveal my whole history because so yeah, I mean, we all have moments of shining goodness,
Mm,
and then we're not so proud as some of the others. And so I like to bring those out in the characters. I have characters who I think are mostly very, very good, like Cullen,
mhm.
and yet, yeah, every once in a while.
Yeah. It's amazing to see when an author can almost to me as the reader, it's almost like it feels effortless, but I know behind the scenes that took so much work, I'm sure, to try and get those characters to feel as human as they are and to make it hit the way it does because I feel like it'd be when even when you look at TV shows, for example, you can tell when a character is very two-dimensional versus
Mhm.
very well developed and thought through and relatable. And, I just feel like it takes a lot of work, but you make it look effortless.
Well, they have to do something surprising once in a while, and that's it, the surprise.
Yeah.
Oh, wait,
Okay.
I didn't expect that from that character. So that helps enliven it a bit, you know?
Yeah. So do you, because authors, every author's experience is different with this, and I'm always curious in terms of when you're writing the story and writing these characters and those surprising moments, do you have everything plotted out, or you kind of discover it as you go and the characters kind of take you away on adventures sometimes?
It's often plotted out.
Okay.
Even some critical dialogues are plotted out. However, especially with dialogue, I like to go where it flows.
Right.
And I'm actually like two people having an argument or whatever, and I like to do that and then do it on the page.
Mm.
Some things come out of the blue. Um, I was writing So Daniel, there's a certain scene with Mark Frederick and Dorilla. And you'll know which one I mean, but I'm not going to talk completely about it because it's a spoiler. I wrote it right after 9/11, and it's because my son, my eldest son, was flying from Boston to San Francisco that day, and his plane crashed into the tower. Now, he wasn't on it. I did not know this. Nothing in cell phones worked. I'd call, but nothing in cell phones worked because it was so flooded. But I felt so horrible. And my son, you know, my oldest kid, my
Mhm.
own son, so emotional. And so those emotions that I felt,
Mm.
I was able to eventually, at some point, translate into other people's emotions in the book. You until you feel something like that,
Yeah.
until you feel it. So I like to hope that I can, when I write,
Mm.
create that kind of a feeling in the reader, at least temporarily,
Yeah.
because none of us want to feel it for real.
No. No, but it gives us more empathy by being able to experience it through stories.
Yeah.
And that's, a big part of why I read. Being able to see through someone else's perspectives and their experiences is so important. So,
Oh, and I will never be a
yeah.
prince or a princess or anything, but I can be one in my books.
Yes.
Hey!
There you go.
Oh,
No, it's amazing what you can do, and fantasy, I think, gives you so much freedom to do that.
yeah.
So it's wonderful to see that you go to those lengths, because to have to I know you experienced that, and that's horrifying, but to be able to put it into a story, put it into another, like your character's experience, effectively reliving those feelings through your characters must have been like 2 times over.
I was fortunate in that he had changed
Yes.
his flight because he was late for it. He's half
Very
Bolivian.
lucky.
He's half Bolivian. They're always late. Anyway, yeah. But
Yeah.
because of that, I had a safety. You see, I had a
Yes.
safety zone to do it in. Not everybody has that either.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And we do have a question here from Joao as well. Do you know which one is going to be the next book coming out after The Real Lord? Or are you already working on it?
I'm sort of working on it. It will be the Mark Frederick book, his
Mm.
story. I do think that's the proper one. I also have one I could write, which is a more direct sequel to the series. I call it The Lost Prince. I could write that one too. You know what? Sometimes it's a matter of which one grabs you. I I can write two books simultaneously. By the way, I've done this before, so maybe it might be both of them, but they won't come out at the same time. I have to pace myself and my poor publisher a little bit. So yeah, it'll be one or the other, either The Lost Prince or else it'll be Mark Frederick's story, which does not have a title.
Both all very exciting in my opinion. I know we talked about earlier, but I'm so excited for the Mark Frederick one. He was one of my favorite characters, and I love what you did with him. So I'm looking forward to more of that character. But in terms of let's talk about your world, because this entire book, I only got to book one, and everything was so complex. There's depth at every turn. You look at the political intrigue, the character work, the magic, the world. Every facet of it has complexity to it, and for that reason, I savored Sardanian, because I felt like if I rush through this, I'm gonna there's so many things I would have missed, you know?
Mm.
So, in terms of the scope of your world being so large and the magic being complex, I mean, the binder, but how did you work all of that out, put it on paper? It feels huge. So, it feels like a lot of moving pieces to keep track of.
It is. I don't know why my brain works that way. I
Okay.
It's all here. I mean, it fits together, but I do have notes. I mean, it's not like I don't have you saw my notes in my folders, and I do have a website where I organize a lot of this for readers to, they can find some of it. It grew over a period of so many years. I would build it slowly. I didn't build this whole world in 1 year or 2 or 3. I started building it decades ago. So it's been built over a period of a long period. And it would be like, oh, I need to explain that. And then I'd go back into an earlier book and I'd explain it. Or it'd be like, oh, I want this thing to happen. So I'd have to go into an earlier book and make sure I could make it happen. Or have the person in place to make it happen. Or to have the magic in place to make it happen. It grew organically. It's like you prune a flower and it sends off new shoots. So that would sometimes happen. Dorillion's a classic example of that. Once he started growing, he became so important in the story. Mr. Stamfel, Peter Stamfel from Dog, did say, he said, "You do realize the series is about him." And I'm like, "No, it's not. It's about this other guy." And he's like, "No, no, it's about Dorillion and Mark Frederick. It's about that."
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh." And then later, eventually, it took me a few years to actually see, yeah, I guess it really is, because that relationship goes through the whole series. So I had to build in when I wrote Sordanian. I took it from older books, and I'm like, I had to do it this way. And I had to make that relationship believable. So that's how some of the world building goes. It's like Sordan's an island. That's cool. Why
Mm,
is it important? Why?
right.
Um, there are 5 cities. That's cool. Why are there only 5? I had to explain that. What's special
Mhm.
about them? Oh, well, they were made by gods. Okay. Um, why did the gods do that? Um, so all of this, okay, this is a new world. It's different from the old world. Why? What happened? I had to create the devastation. I had to figure out what it was about. I had to do the consequences thereof. And Lawyer created the second world, the second creation. The 3 worlds that are one is a very old construct. What happened was the lawyer gods, when the world was destroyed by the Aryati, who were the big people, they learned magic, they learned technology, and they found a god and they killed the god and they took the god's power and they decided to make it their own. And guess what? It destroyed the world. When the
Mm,
world was destroyed, Lawyer said, "Well, I want to save my creation, our creation." And they
mhm.
split it in time. So it's the world is the past, the moment of destruction, which is forever happening. It's now, right now. And then the future. The future is the world we're in the books,
Right.
the second creation. And so once
Oh,
I had that, I had to hang other things. What did that result in?
right.
This is why the people don't have advanced technology, for one thing. Lawyer put
Mhm.
in a new rule in the second creation. You can't have certain types of things.
Yeah.
So there's, it all built gradually over a period of years as I worked out the problems that were
Mm.
created by writing the book. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so just going down the rabbit hole of hows and whys and going from there and trying to put it all the puzzle pieces together.
Yeah. And it
And
was like, yeah, certain things happened. And
yeah.
the next, you have to explain it. And same with some of like Julian's brother, who's an interesting character.
Mhm.
Why is he the way he is? Well, the way he is ultimately later down the pipe matters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you open Sordanian with a devastating scene. I know it's only the first scene, folks, but it's pretty grim.
Oops. Yeah.
But but it sets the stage of what to expect.
I thought it would be too strong to open with. The original opening of the book, the one the agents saw and said, "It's too long," uh, actually started with Mark Frederick and
Oh,
Severin
interesting.
LeBron. Yeah, it started earlier, but
Oh.
I figured, well, I can't cut that scene, so that's where I start. Start right there. Yeah.
I haven't seen the other scene, but I think
Not that good, frankly. I'm a better writer now than I was then. I'm a
right.
much better writer now than I was
That's what happens the more you do something, right? You hope for progress and you work at it
then. That's
and, you get better. But, yeah, I think it sets the tone of what's to come. It
true.
also sets up Dorilian's character because this opening scene is for anyone who hasn't read it. It's the first scene, but it's him as a child and kind of sets the stage for part of where that anger comes from. And, yeah, when you're reading that, you're like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I get why he's angry." You know?
Yeah,
So, with that being the case, I wanna dive into the political intrigue a little bit.
okay.
Where does that come from? The political intrigue of it all, is it just your own passion for that type of n craziness in stories? Is it the depth of it? Is it the intricacies of human nature when politics are thrown in?
All of the above, but that last one, very important, and I'm
Mhm.
gonna blame it all on Dune. Um,
Oh.
I read Dune as a teenager, and when it was fresh and new and everybody was talking about it. Yeah, I read Dune,
Mm,
and I really liked what it did in terms of world building, in terms of politics, geography, sociology, and technology, and economy also. So that filtered, I said, I can do something like that. I want to do something that deep. And so I did. And yes, I am fascinated by human nature and the way humans act. I'm an introvert, very introverted, very shy. You are the first person I've had a video interview with. No one
and
asks me, but that might be the other reason.
well, I am so grateful, so thank you. Thank
So
you for
very
joining me.
shy, and I don't speak up in crowds. What I do is I listen and I watch people.
Mm,
And I've always found the way people handle things is interesting. Now, one of my jobs, I've had many jobs, but one was as a legislative assistant to somebody in government. Politics is a fascinating thing. The compromises, the trade offs. In general, I've worked with people who are genuine civil
mm,
servants. They want to do good, but they have to compromise to do good. It's amazing
and
sometimes how that happens. And I've
yeah.
seen some real crooks too. So I like to bring that all out in this. I've actually found that so interesting, and I love. There's a character named Shira Lane who's
Mm.
she's an interesting person. She's a slimy one. That one, anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, she is. So it's like I love to put people in, yeah, in situations and manipulate. Yeah.
It is fascinating, like you say, like, I've worked in heavily bureaucratic and
Mhm.
political
Bureaucracy.
environments, and I always found in those circumstances, those discussions, it was the things said between the lines.
Mhm.
There's always a specific way people will word things
Mhm.
to stay political and politically appropriate and appear civilly, but when you actually learn the lingo,
Mhm.
there's a lot of toxicity behind those lines.
There is, and sometimes you're getting permission to do something or not. You're being
Yep.
told not to do something, and it doesn't even sound like that. And
Yeah.
so, yes, the politics is interesting. I created my own politics, of course, for the
Mhm.
type of world I had, but I hope it feels fairly real.
I'd say so. I mean, it political intrigue is always fascinating to me because you can go quite in depth or you can keep it pretty bare bones and still have a very intriguing story and conflicts and dynamics between those characters, but you
Yeah.
definitely take, like everything, you take everything with so much depth to it that I question everyone. I question everything. It's not as simple as
Good.
yes. It's not as simple as like, okay, well, X, Y, and Z has happened, so this might next happen.
Yeah.
With everything that you've set up, there's so much going on that even if I think something might happen, I'm like, wild card over here could throw everything out of the book. We don't know.
And he does. But
And it could
yeah,
take one phrase.
plus a lot of it, see, that's probably Sordanian's burden, which is
Mm,
sets up a lot. And
yeah.
once you're through all of that and absorbed it, and once you have it, the second book's not quite so dense. And after
Mm,
that, you don't need any explanations for
yes.
anything. You understand exactly what's going on. At least I like
Right.
to think so. Anyone who's read the later books, please tell me if I'm wrong. But I think that is Sordanian's challenge, and why some
Mm,
people, I do know many people who started and said they can't finish it. So
right.
I think a lot more people should give it a shot and definitely
Mm,
push through to the ending because it's a corker. But you know, that's the challenge is if you can stay with it and learn it, you won't have
mm,
any problem with the rest of the series. None.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I think, it's very easy for readers to pick up a book and go, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna blast through this, summer read, let's go."
Mhm.
But yeah, this was definitely one best savored, take your time with because it is so complex,
Yeah.
right? Your world, your magic system, you don't always explain everything either,
No, no.
right? So
Well, do you really understand everything in this world? I don't. I'll tell
no,
you. I'm quite
but
confused a lot of the time.
I guess if I'm trying to put a comparison to it, I would say Malazan in the sense of you're a fly on the
I would
wall,
too, but I
right?
hate to say that because it sounds arrogant. It's
Well,
not
no, it's
fair you compare yourself to that, you know?
valid though, it is, because you take a similar approach in that you're putting the reader as a fly on the wall, you're kind of putting them in the world, they have to stumble, you kinda
Mhm.
have to figure things out as you read, and not everything's gonna be explained, so, yeah, I would definitely say a Malazan comparison with that.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that because that's a really great series.
I've read the first 4 books,
Mhm.
and I already know I had to take a break, but I already know I'm gonna have to start over in order to keep
Uh-huh.
reading.
People have said that. Yeah, yeah.
'Cause there's so much that happens, but,
Mhm.
I just wanna say thank you, EL, thanks for joining us, and, yes, he says, "Thank you for having LL Stevens on, thank you for being here, and I love seeing you, that's great,
Aw,
thank you so much."
we have
So,
fans.
one it's always good to see, right? I love seeing people pop in and be so excited as I am because I'm not alone in my million questions and just appreciation, and with that being the case, one of the reasons why I love this start off so much is it's such a polished book. It really is a hidden gem. It's so polished. And I'd love to know when you're going through your process, what is that like to get such a good quality polish on your stories?
There's 2 things at work, one of which is, my publisher and I are both perfectionists.
Mm,
The second
okay.
part is, I do a lot of work on it. I don't have a deadline. The series is finished. That
Mm,
means my only deadline is getting it to the publisher. I go through each book 2 or 3 times, revising and editing to pull the story together. It goes to my alpha reader, uh, Thea. You may see her on my website if you go on my website. She reads it. She gets back to me. She also fixes my commas because I'm horrible at commas. And then I do it again, and then I give it to my husband Steve. Now Steve um, is a lawyer, and he's a great editor. He's edited. If you know anything about legal editors, they're good. And anyway, so he goes through and he tells me, "Boy, no man would act like that." Okay, I take that seriously. So he
right.
goes through and he helps me. And then um, after he goes, I go through it again and I send it to my publisher. My publisher sees whether they want it or not. And then, if usually they do, and I'm sorry, I
No,
chose a very
that's
careless
great.
manuscript. I, I'm,
Yeah.
I'm in search of the immaculate manuscript. I
Right.
would love one day to send in something that needs no work, but that
Yeah.
hasn't happened yet. So anyway, she edits it, and then she sends it to an editor who edits it, and so I get it back, and I've got red all over it. It's bleeding, and I
Yeah.
fix it. And then it goes to a copy editor, and I fix that, and then it goes to a proofreader. So it's been through several edits. This is not like, okay, I sent it to a person who read it and said it was okay. And
Yeah.
it's been through. I cut my teeth on traditional publishing,
Mm.
where I would go to workshops and they'd tell you how you were supposed to write if you ever wanted a publisher. And at that time, there was, Daw and Berkeley and Del Rey and all of the publishers, but that was the only way to get published. You couldn't self-publish then.
Yeah.
You had to get a publisher to take you on. You had to make a manuscript look good. It had to be tight because they didn't want to work on it too much.
Mm.
So that's how I cut my teeth. So I expect when I turn something in, I expect it to be in good publishable shape.
Yeah.
And for Sordanian, because I was trying agents to try to get it sold back to trad, I workshopped it. I workshopped it in the online writers workshop, and it was workshopped by Brad Bellido and Aliette de Bodard and Elizabeth Bear. They
Wow.
all read it and gave me feedback on this book.
Yeah.
And then it also went through the Pendragon workshop, which was a writer's workshop. C.N. Leslie was in there and some other authors. So it's been through, this book especially, went through workshops, editors, professional writers who've been well published, and of course, everything I did. And that's
Wow.
how it got to that state.
So when you're looking at that time frame,
Yeah.
how long does that entire process take you?
Well, let's take book 6 as an example.
Yeah, go for it.
That's the book I'm working on right now. I have 56 pages left to revise.
Yay.
The climax of the book. Anyway, okay, that process has taken me months.
Okay.
My husband Steve read it first. Thea didn't. I sent it to Steve first because he needed something to do. He was newly retired. He needed something to do. So I gave him the book, and he gave me what his ideas were and what needed fixing, and I have been fixing it. And also what I thought needed fixing. Now, sometimes that means moving chapters from a previous book into it because I had to end the previous book differently and whatever.
Okay.
Putting stuff in. So it took probably 6 months
Okay. Yeah.
to today. And then I'm going to send it to Thea. She's getting it this week. And then
Right.
it'll go to my publisher when she wants it. Once it comes back from Thea, I'll just keep editing it.
Wow.
But it should be in real good shape.
Yeah, well, I'd say so. That's a lot
I
of
don't want to
time
overwhelm my
investment.
poor publisher by sending it too soon, so I'll wait till she asks for it.
Yeah.
But it takes a good 6 months or more.
Yeah.
Just my editing, and then the other people, I'd say it takes a year.
Yeah. That's a good chunk of time. Especially when you're so close to
Yeah.
being done,
Mhm.
right? You're almost done this series, and I'm sure you're just like, "Come on. Come on."
Well, I do. It's been my dream to have these published. I thought at one point, because I couldn't get an agent to take it on, I thought, well, I'm just gonna keep it and my kids will love it someday. Maybe my
Yeah.
children will like it. But when my publisher asked me, she said she had been one of the people I'd shared it with, and she said, I'd
Right.
love to publish these. She says, I
Mhm.
think they should be read. I want to get them out before the world. And I said,
Yeah.
help me, I will do it. Because like
I
I said, I'm not self-publishing. It's not
Yeah.
going to happen. Yeah,
No, that's fair. The way I look at the industry is it's the way you wanna do your business, right?
yeah,
There's entrepreneurship, and then there's working for a company or a blending in a way. So yeah, it's just the way you prefer to do
oh,
your
I
business.
love self-publishing. I wish I were set up that way, but I'm
But
not.
everyone's different.
Everybody's different, and
Everyone's
I will
different.
give any self-published book a chance if it sounds interesting.
Absolutely. And, I'm glad they picked it up because, you were talking about how with trad, it's, can they move it? Can they sell it?
And they move it,
And
yes.
yeah, and I mean, as the reader, I'm like, "Yeah, I'll read that. Give me,"
Well, we're
but
going on series. They want
Yeah.
one book and a
Yeah.
standalone book, and maybe if that sells, they'll take on another book.
But see, they do that so much. Like I've seen
Yeah,
so many books that start as one, they're like, "Oh, it's a standalone," and then
yeah,
they're like, "Oh, this was so popular, we're now making 12." And
yeah.
it's like, "Wait, what
And
happened there?"
I've had very good friends, author friends, who got contracts for 3 books,
Mm,
and the first book didn't sell well, and the publisher vacates the contract, and
right.
those books can't be sold to anyone else. Kate Elliott had that happen to one of her series, where after the first book or 2 didn't sell, publisher stopped publishing and wouldn't publish more, but they didn't give up the contract. They had the contract for the whole series.
Right.
She can't finish her series.
That's a
I
huge
didn't want
risk as
that to
well.
happen. I didn't want that to happen to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you found a way that
I
you
think
could
I'll do it.
make it happen and publish all
Yeah.
6, and
Mhm.
hopefully more. So we're gonna dive off and change topics here because you have hobbies in the background too, and you have more show and tell, which I love. So you paint miniatures. Can
I
you share some of
do.
that?
My husband and I play board games,
Mm.
and one of my first miniatures was a dragon.
Ah, so that was the first one.
This was my one of my first.
You'd never convinced me that was your first.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
really well done.
it turns out I can paint. Well, I've always been artistic,
Right.
yeah. And,
Yes.
so anyway, we've and since then, I've painted other things like, my more modern monsters, this one there,
Oh, yeah.
and he's from Cthulhu, Death May Die. He's an elder
Oh,
god monster type thing you have to kill.
yeah.
We kill him regularly. And, also from, Zombie Side,
Oh, okay.
I did this person. Now, Zombicide's an interesting series. Does she look familiar?
Was it Cena?
It is. They
Oh
call
my
her
gosh.
Zusa. They call her Zusa, but guess what? That's Xena.
That's Cena. That looks like Cena.
And, but I also my favorite one of the characters I always play is Baldric the Wizard.
And that's fantastic.
Yeah. And here's a favorite. Some people may recognize her. This is from World of Warcraft.
Okay.
She plays that's Janna or Jenna or something. We
Yeah.
play her in a certain game we play. We play a lot of games. Um, Now, Steve likes to call this guy Namor. He's not. Namor is not bald, but he is a necromancer.
Just paint some hair on him.
Hair on him. So anyway, I do stuff like that. I mean, I had the voodoo queen. Her name is Aaliyah, but she's oh
Oh,
wait,
up
say I can
there.
always tell where the camera is. There it is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you fall into doing this?
Well, the love of my life likes to collect board games. He loves
Right.
to play board games, and he's my second husband. I married him in 2017. And anyway, he got me into playing these games. And one day he says, "Well, we should maybe paint these blobby looking characters because they're like ping. They're just a blob of plastic, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe we should paint them. They look better." And I'm like, "Well, yes, we could paint them. I don't see why not. I used to paint little figurines around the house and stuff. I could maybe do that." So we started painting them, and we
Mm.
kind of really got into it because it's a lot of fun. I mean, they're a lot more fun to play with something like that.
Yeah, it's a lot more visual.
Yeah, it's a lot more visual than just a gray piece to move around the board. We play a lot of games, and uh, I like to create characters anyway, right? So
Mm.
I'm creating characters with these paint jobs.
Yeah.
And I give them personalities, and I talk for them and stuff, and it's part of the fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with board games then, do you
Mhm.
have any recommendations for people to try? Some of your favorites maybe?
If you're like me and you like story games and games with characters, I love Ian's End. It's a
Okay.
card game. It's more than a board game, but it doesn't have painted figures. But it's a real fun game because I give personalities to my mages
Yeah.
and have them kill things. But, Zombie Side is really good. I mean, you can do Clovis.
Yeah.
Have a warrior and you're group or Xena, that Zombicide Black Plague is medievalish. And
Okay.
although it's zombies, I am not particularly fond of zombies. I don't like zombie movies.
Huge fan of them.
No, I don't like them much. But I did like Z Nation, but that's a different story.
Okay.
It was a good story. But Zombicide has good stories, good characters, and you get to kill zombies, which is kind of
Okay.
recommend those both. And more if you want more. Cthulhu Death May Die has
Okay.
very good stories. And Elder Gods. So that's cool too.
That's fantastic. I love that you have that artistic skill and you put it to use for something for you and your partner to
Yeah,
enjoy.
yeah. We
That's
both get to
lovely.
enjoy that. Yeah. Otherwise, living with me is no great picnic because I just write all day. I'm kind of boring.
I would I mean, you are fulfilling your passion, and you
Yeah.
have the support to do it, and then, like, those board games, I know from trying anyway, they can take a long time to
Take
finish, that's a
hours.
lot.
They
Yeah.
can. They can. And his family plays it too. I call it the big
Mhm.
Italian family because they're very big personalities. My
Yeah,
family's like a bunch of German Wisconsinites, and
yeah.
we're very reserved, very reserved. But
Yeah.
yeah, and they all play board games, so we get together and play board games. Yeah.
That's fantastic, that's a great way to spend some time.
Yeah.
So, do you have any other hobbies, anything else that you fit into your schedule, or is that kind of where your energy is right now? Because that's still a lot on your plate with those books too.
It is, but I always have made, spending time with my family and my husband
Mm.
a priority. In other
Yeah,
words, I never write on weekends. I just don't.
yeah. Okay.
Um, unless there's a deadline, and then I might if I have an editing deadline. So we've always had time for vacations and things, spending time together. One thing I love to do is travel. I've always liked
Okay.
traveling, ever since I was young. My dad, like I said,
Mhm.
moved us around. I never lived more than 2 years in the same place until I was 18. Um, but, I haven't been to Europe yet. I would love to, but I've been to South America. I've been to the Caribbean islands. I've been to Canada. Love it, and
Yeah.
I would could live in Halifax. But I mean,
Halifax?
Halifax,
Oh,
nice,
yeah, it's
great
beautiful
city.
there.
And it's like all over the United States. So we
Mhm.
travel. We spend time at the ocean every year.
Nice.
I like gardening, but I'm getting older. Getting on my knees and getting back up are two different stories.
Yes.
So, so I'm not gardening as much as I used to. Uh,
Right.
yeah, and I love to read.
Yeah, of
And I'm
course.
not writing, and then I am deep in a book, so I'm not reading at the moment. I will be as soon as that book is done. I'll read at night, in the evenings instead of, yeah, other things.
That's brilliant. I'm also a bit of a gardener. I'm not, like, huge because I've got a three-year-old, and trying to do that with a
Oh,
three-year-old
good.
is
Yes, yes,
chaos.
yeah.
Whether, you're trying to dig a hole and then all of a sudden your toddler's running the opposite direction, you have to chase them, or somehow the hole got filled, you know?
Mhm.
That's always a problem.
Oh, I see, Thea's joined us, Thea
We have
Nation.
3.
She is my
Okay.
alpha reader.
Oh, lovely. We
She reads my books.
Her ears must have been
Probably
burning then.
shouldn't be outing her like this, but yeah, yeah.
Well, there was only good things being said, Thea. You can go back and watch the replay, but yes, that must be quite the honor too, to be able to go through and get first look, right? And help craft it all, help
She
strengthen it.
really does, she's very helpful, and, I appreciate it very much.
Joao says, waiting for your visit, Portugal is a good place to start visiting Europe.
I think we will be visiting Portugal at some point, in Spain. Uh, we have family in Spain too, so
There you go.
well, the Bolivians are everywhere. And, anyway, yeah, so, I would like to visit Portugal very much. From what I understand, it's one of the loveliest countries in Europe.
Yeah, I haven't been to Europe myself, but I always hear beautiful things. Those
Yeah.
videos you see, absolutely stunning.
Mhm.
And she says, I get the privilege of reading the books first.
So nice, you're so diplomatic. Yeah.
So, I am curious because once you are complete with this world and the stories that you do have planned, is there another genre that you would like to write in maybe down the line? Or that you just see as a challenge and you wanna try?
I'm
Even if
not
it doesn't happen.
quiet romanticy. No, because by the time I get to it, it'll be over.
Right.
I will write I have science fiction stories I want to get out there.
Oh,
They're
okay.
good and they're ready to go, and my publisher has sounded interested in them. But, yeah, I would like to get some more ones out
I
of the Triumvirate series
yeah.
before I don't know, we'll see which ones go. But I do like science fiction, I've always loved
Mm,
science fiction. There's even a basis, there's a thread of science in my series. That science has to make sense. Or if
mm.
it's magic, it doesn't have to make sense. But the thing is, I try to keep anything science, biology, anatomy, human
Yeah.
physiology, I like it to be real. And so
Mm.
I've always liked the science aspect.
That's fascinating, and I imagine too with that passion of creating worlds,
Mm.
put that in an entire universe. That must be like a playing in a freaking giant sandbox,
Mm.
for you.
It
And
is. I
yeah,
play in my worlds.
yeah.
I have so much fun. I do
Mm.
play and invent and move people around. It's, saying it's like being a god is kind of presumptuous, but
I mean, it's your world for they say your world for a reason, right?
I have such a blast. I hope readers do too, because
Yeah.
I had a blast creating it. And I had a blast making these people angry. And I had a blast having them kill each other. And I had a blast having them have lovemaking and children and whatever else is happening. It
Yeah.
was fun. So I hope that readers have fun with
We
it
need to get that on a shirt for you, Linda. I love making my characters kill each other.
too. I'm a dangerous person. My
Yeah.
son was mortified when he read Savannah. He's like, "Oh my
Really?
god. Oh my god, my mom." And then when he read The Kill King, "Oh my god, my mom." And then he's like, "That's my mom."
I guess that would be, right? Because 'Cause I've met people where they're super sweet, they're really nice, and then they write these really dark, terrifying and you're like, "Whoa, where did
I
that
realized
come
your
from?"
mom really might have killed you. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And, Thea here says, "Linda's manuscripts are by far better than anyone else's that I've ever edited."
She's an
Oh.
editor too. Did I mention that?
Yeah.
You find the people who you can work with, editors, other writers, be very picky about who you work with. I
Mm.
believe that. But you can find these people and you adopt them. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.
No, that's a beautiful way to look at it. Did you, in terms of finding those people, what would you if you're giving advice to another author, how would you say, or what advice would you give in finding that team you wanna adopt?
I've it's interesting. I found people through the workshops, but that's not so much the way people go anymore. I would say hire a good editor. Do get references. I'm like Sarah Chorn. She's great.
Mm,
She writes beautifully, and
yes,
she's a good editor.
yes.
If you can afford her, get her. Use her. Learn from her. Maybe befriend her. But just if you like the style of an editor you've used, and get references.
Mm,
People will say, "Hey, maybe try this person, maybe try that person," and find the ones who you really can trust and whose advice resonates with you, because not everybody gives advice that's well directed at you. It may
right.
be very good for someone else, but it's too harsh for you or it's too soft for you. So you
Mm,
find people who your style and their style, you as an author and them as an editor mesh. And same for alpha and beta readers. I know a lot of people look for they send out lots of ARCs for beta readers. I don't do that. I just have a couple people that I use. I find that for me, an introvert, shy,
mm.
not necessarily trusting of everybody, it works for me to just have a few people. But other people
Right,
thrive with having lots of feedback from a lot of people.
right.
Find what works for you. Yeah.
That's fantastic, and we have a self-pub, with Andy here as well.
Hi, Andy.
Thank thank you for joining us. It's always fascinating because, yeah, everyone is so different.
Yeah.
How they work, how they put that creativity into action. And but we're going to close out soon. I have just a couple more questions here, but in terms of your profile picture, I have to ask,
Oh.
where does the what is the story behind that profile picture?
Oh, do you mean the one on Twitter?
Yes, and you use it on your website as
Okay.
well, and there's a
Yes,
few other
because I
spots.
love that art.
Yeah,
Um,
so I gotta know.
you gotta know. I will be honest here because Thea knows the story.
Okay.
Um,
We're
I
Thea,
wrote
hold her
I
accountable.
wrote for another for a publisher I had, and then these were books I don't talk about too much.
Right.
Uh, anyway, I had this artwork created for one of the characters. His name is Borgel the Barbarian,
Okay.
and I just love that art. He looks so happy.
He
He's so
does.
happy and and that's me.
Yeah.
So I like that. It's gender neutral. Well, it's not really gender neutral. You can assume I'm a guy if you want to, but it's a piece of artwork and it's happy, and I'm happy. I'm a happy,
Yeah.
and so it kind of is me. So I
Mhm.
use it in a lot of things. You're right. I use it on Twitter. I use it in other places. Yeah, because I like
That
it, and that's me falling in love with art, right?
that no more explanation needed. That's beautiful. And, in terms of our live chat, if you do have a question for Linda here, pop them in. But we will be closing out our chat soon, as I know we're almost at the hour and a half mark there. But, in the
Oh,
meantime,
you went a long way.
good chat though, because it's all fascinating to hear your processes, and I mean, hearing some of the happiness with killing those characters. It's just always a good time.
It would be a spoiler to tell you who I like killing the most. Yeah.
Oh, well, we'll have that discussion one day.
We will. We will. Yeah.
In the meantime, though, where can people find you? Where can they follow for updates and hear about what's coming out next?
Well, Twitter's a great place to follow
Mhm.
me. I'm very active on there. I'm on there every day. I have a website that has lots of info. It gives links to all of my other places that I do show up occasionally. The website is www.triumpery.com. I think you may have it in the links.
Yes. In the description below, people can go and find those.
Yeah, that it also has a lot of lore and short stories that I've written, and I'm going to be putting more short stories.
Oh,
But Twitter's the best place to find me. I have a Facebook group, an author group, again linked in the website, where
okay.
I correspond. I put up more personal stuff, and I put up more excerpts and more views of new things, like new artwork will go there first
Mm,
with stuff. I talk. My family is there. My
right.
best fans are there, and you know, I like to talk there and I chat sometimes.
Mm,
So Facebook is a good place too. I'm not real fond of the company, but I love my little author website.
okay. And, what I might do, because I don't think I have the link for that one, I might get that link from you after, and I can update the
Oh, okay,
description for that,
great.
just to make it easier for people when they're going to look for it.
I'm not great at social media. I wish I were better, but I try. I do try. Yeah.
Social media is overrated in ways, right?
Mhm.
They always say spend less time on it, and for good reason,
Mhm.
everything in moderation.
Yes.
But, I do wanna say thank you so much for joining me, for telling me all your stories, and I'm sure we only scratched the surface in some cases there.
Alas, yes. But maybe
'Cause
that's a good thing. I don't know. Yeah.
well, maybe one day we can follow up with another chat and
Anytime.
maybe do a deeper dive into some of those stories.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, anytime. I'm more than happy. This has been a true pleasure. Thank
Uh,
you.
likewise, thank you so much for joining me. To everyone watching in the chat, live and in the replay, thank you so much for watching. If you have not already, you should be reading
And I'm so
Sordanian.
happy to see some of the people who showed up. That's like,
Yes.
"Oh, hi, guys." I know some of these people from my websites and stuff. So,
It's brilliant to see everyone in the chat. You guys make this such a fun time as well with your questions and your commentary on the side. But guys, you should be reading this book. You should be starting the series. I always hear people, talk about, I want more high fantasy. I want more political fantasy. I want those stories that I used to get that were so in depth, like the classics. Go read Sardonian. Go give it a try because you'll get quite a bit of what you're looking for there and then some. So, in the meantime, everyone, enjoy the rest of your night. Have a wonderful week. And thank you so much again for watching. Take care of yourselves.